Hambini fans, and welcome to another episode of Hambini Destroys. In today's episode we've got these, which are the new Winspace D67 wheels, and we are going to do a teardown of the bearing. First thing we need to do is we need to get the cassette off. Now I've slackened this off already, but you just get a Shimano cassette key and undo it. So I always use my heavy duty lock rings because they're a bit longer, so there's less chance of them slipping, and it also reduces the number of bite marks that you get inside the cassette. Get that off in a wanner. Take the brake disc off the other side. Take the plugs out. Now I take the Freehub off. Now the best way to do this is to turn it and pull it out at the same time. Just be very careful because the pawls may drop out. So we've just had one that has dropped out, in fact two that have dropped out. Now there's a spacer in there that's actually quite difficult to see, but we need to get it out so we don't lose it. So screwdriver in there. Just pry it out. Be careful that you do not bend it. So this is what we've got left behind. We've got a 6903 bearing on that side and the Freehub part of the main axle. And on that side we've got the other bearing, and we just need to push this axle out. A couple of ways you can do it. You can either get a hammer and hit there, or you can press it out. I'm going to go for pressing it out. On this side of the wheel, which is the drive side, I've put a piece of soft aluminium. You could use a piece of pipe or just a piece of plastic or something. And the handle. On this side, we need something that'll just kiss that lip. So I've gone into my little box and got a 27mm socket. Put that over there, and then we bolt all that up. That's all clamped up. Just turn the handle and the bearing should just pop out. Come out now. So take the socket off, and there's the bearing. Remove it from the shaft. Withdraw that, and then you can slide the axle out. There are a couple of ways to get this bearing out of the drive side. The way I'm going to do it is you take the axle, spin it round, put it back in, so that lip is up against the bearing. So it pops out like that, and then we're just going to push that way. Got it all set up again, just tighten this. You can hear it's already popped. And the bearing's out, so press, socket, and the bearing pops out. Bearing's here, you can just slide that off the axle. There's the axle free. Here's the Freehub. It's got a 6803 bearing on that side and a 6803 bearing on that side. In between is a spacer. That spacer is critical because it prevents excessive preload, and it determines the initial preload. There are a couple of ways to get this bearing out. Now some people use these, which are blind bearing extractors. Now I don't recommend you use this for the very reason that when you put this in and then tighten this up to take it out, you end up with the extractor horns sticking out ever so slightly. Now in the case of this Freehub, the spacer there does not have a chamfer, or it's just basically been deburred, it's completely flat. If you use this in there, you will damage that spacer, so you need to have a non-contact method of removing it. If you damage the spacer, then the preload will be shot to pieces. You can flare the end. I mean, the aluminium, which is what the tube is made out of, is extremely soft. The bearing is comparatively rock hard, so it will preferentially eat the aluminium. Just get a hammer and give it a little tap. go, all out. This is the tube out of the middle. The thing with these is there's hardly any chamfer on them. They're basically just deburred. The Freehub -1 bearing, we'll pop the other one out now. This time I'll put the axle through from this side, through from that side, and just get a quick clamp and clamp it. And the bearing comes out. Front wheel, to get the bearings out, we need to first of all take the brake disc off. I've already slackened this one off. Then we need to get these plugs out. Now these can be a bit problematic, so what I find useful is to use a punch and then push it through and then get it into the little groove and ease it out like that. Pull the cap off the other side. Both caps are off, we just need to push the axle out. Bearing on this side, which is the disc side, is the 6903, and the bearing on the other side is the 6803. All I've done here is I've set this up with a 27mm socket, so it's just kissing up around the outside. Put a flat disc on that side and we just turn and it should pop the bearing out. I think that just came out. So to get the other bearing out, we've got some ready-made tools here. We can use the axle from the rear hub, pop that through so the step is on that side. And we can just push on there and put a socket around there and it should just pop out. We'll sort this out. There's a piece of sacrificial aluminium there, it's quite soft. The 32mm socket's there, and we just turn and this should just draw that bearing out. So that's popped off. And that's the bearing that's come off. On the front hub there is a 6903 on the non-drive side on the disc side and 6803 on the drive side. You should really replace the bearings, don't reuse them after you've taken them out, but for photographic purposes I'm going to put them back in. This is the 6903, pop that into that hole. So put the 6903 into that hole, flip it over, and then we need to put the axle through. So make sure you get the right side of the axle and pop that in so it locates into the bearing. If I flip that back over, just see what's happened there. Now I get the 6803 and put that back into the aperture. Now need a couple of over axle presses, so a 6903 over axle press and a 6803 over axle press. This is a short 6803 over axle press. I do sell them on my website. You can get them in plastic. I do this all day, so these ones are steel. Once you've got it all lined up, so the 6803s on this side, which is the drive side, and the 6903s on the far side, which is the disc brake side or the non-drive side, just tighten it up and it should draw them all in. That's it. Once it's stopped, just take it apart and have a look. So there we go, the bearing's been replaced. Then just put the caps back in. On the back wheel, you can do it a number of ways, but the way I'm going to show you is to do one at a time. I'll put the disc brake side, so the non-drive side, in first, blue seal outwards, make sure it's all clean. I've just, this has been through a cleaner, so that's fairly well done. And just pop that in loosely. So I've got a socket in there. It doesn't really matter about the size. All you need to do is make sure you're jacking off something that's stable. And then the over axle press is on the other side, so that's a 6903. Put the handle on and tighten it all up. And just make sure it's all lined up. And then tighten away, and this will force this in. When it stops, just take it apart and have a look. So that's gone hard. That's the disc brake side bearing that's in. Now we'll get the axle. If you want to put a bit of grease on it, you can do. This side, which is the the shorter side, the step side, pop that through so it comes out the other side. Get the other 6903 bearing, slide that over so it's just in the aperture like that. So I've poked the M12 rod through, get the over axle press, slide it over, and then you need to put the handle on it. As you tighten it, you just need to make sure it's all lined up because it's not so dimensionally stable. Might be easier if you do this horizontally. I think we've got it. That part of the bike is now assembled, wheel is now assembled. This is the Freehub. I've taken all of the poles out and just put them in my little box along with the spacer. It's really important that you do not lose those things. The best way to do this is to do it in 2 stages. So we'll put one bearing in, then the tube, and then the other bearing. It's very important that you do not damage that because that will have been pre-machined to give you the preload. This one almost all the way in, but all I've done is use the over axle press, another socket, and you just tighten, and it locks up, and you can get it apart. And there you go, the bearing's full, flush. Next step is to put the tube in, and then get the other bearing ready. So just line that up in the aperture. Again, if you want to put grease on, you can. A couple of sockets, over axle press, and just a spacer there, and just tighten this up. And that's locked up, bearings in. Make sure the tube's in the right place and stiff. Should just lock up. And reassemble the poles. Finished Freehub there. Make sure you get the spacer. I've already put it on the wheel. And make sure it's all clean. Poke it down. Then get the Freehub. Make sure when you're putting this in, you're rotating it. Make sure that seal's very clean as well. Final job is to put the end caps back in. It's that time of the show again. It wouldn't quite be a Hambini video without a PowerPoint, would it? Hambini destroys the Winspace Hyper D67 by Hambini, age 5. I should just stress, this doesn't actually apply specifically to the D67. It's any of this style of hub. Check me out on Grindr, Ricky Ramrod. Right, bearings that you need if you're getting the disc wheels, you'll need this lot. So I've got them as want them to last and then want them to go fast. So if you want them to last, you need full seals, which are commonly known as 2RS, but some tossers in the bike industry now adopt NTN's bearing terminology, and they quote sort of LLU. So we forgot to check the pen was working, but clearly it is. I mean, generically, if you go into a bearing shop and ask for LLU, they'll probably look at you with a blank face. Go in and ask for 2RS. But anyway, that is it in NTN. Yeah, go from that. Something I need to make you aware of, and it's become a lot more prevalent of late, is this, fakes. Now, you may have seen this on my website. The genuine NTN is on the left, the fake is on the right. You'd have a hard time knowing which one was which just from the packaging. You've also got these, which are the SKF. Now, historically, it was SKF that always used to get counterfeited. Now, if you went to some random punter on the street, you'd probably say that one was the real one, looks more real. It's not. That one's the real one and that one's the fake. So, you know, bear that in mind. Again, there's the packaging there. It gets a bit more, even more worse than that. Now, this is where a bottom bracket came back to me, where a bike shop had taken it apart a few times, and the end user came back and said, your bottom bracket's crap, blah, 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 blah. The bearings keep failing regularly. On the left is a genuine NTN bearing, okay? On the right is a fake NTN bearing, and you could probably see on the outset, it looks to be almost identical. In fact, you know, it'd be very hard pushed to say there was a difference. As soon as you pop the seals off, there is quite a clear difference. I mean, check out the number of balls that are in the real one. There's loads of them. It's quite sparsely populated in the fake one. The other thing is, and this is an important thing, is the cage. So the cage on the NTN is riveted on the fake, which came in an NTN box and all of that kind of good stuff. It was supplied, ironically, by one of the major bearing suppliers in the UK. Take from that what you will. If you Google them, you'll find that they have previous history for selling fake SKF, but there you go. That has significantly lower load rating. The cage is not riveted, it's just like a a folded over cage, lap jointed cage. Tools that you'll need: 6803 over axle press, 6903 over axle press. You can get them from Hambini.com. I put quantity 2 there. You could probably get away with 1. Depends on how easy you want to do it. And then some stud bar, some nuts, and some M12 stud bar is what I usually go on. Put this chart in because the last time I did it, people were got into were quite interested in it. This is an NLGI class for grease. There are a few different standards for grease, and it basically revolves around how viscous or liquidy it is. The NLGI one is very popular, I guess, in the States, but basically as you go down, so from 000 towards 6, you're getting harder. Best all-round grease, I would say, for lubrication and assembly is a 0. Now, some people go on about marine grease and putting that into bearings. If you do that, marine grease is probably 3 or 4 on this scale. You push it in, the bearings may not get up to high enough speed to actually get the grease to semi-liquefy. And if that is the case, i.e. you're not going fast enough, you'll end up with little cavities going round and then there's no lubrication in those areas. So best all round is a 0. If you're going to use it just for assembly, then I'd probably say the 3 is okay. But yeah, you can't really use the 3 for lubrication purposes. That's it. If you've got any questions or comments, please bang them all in the box below. I do read all of the comments. And that brings us to the end of this video. If you did enjoy it, remember to smash that like button. If you didn't, go screw yourself. And as always, keep banging your hairdresser.